to wake up a little bit. We have the tough talk today after lunch. Maybe the coffee buzz starting to wear off. So yeah, I'm Howard, CTO of Onramp. We're a talent solutions company. Today, we're going to be talking about evaluating your team's success as you grow or scale. So specifically looking at engineering and product organizations. I have an awesome panel here. I've been talking with these folks the past couple of days. They're a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a good time. I'd love for each of you to quickly share a snippet about your background. And I ask a fun question whenever I moderate panels. The one app on your phone that you think is on no one else's phone in the audience.
Could be dangerous.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Right. I'm Kathryn Koehler. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering for Zuckerberg Science. And I used to run application engineering at Evernote for a few years. And I've been all over the industry, working with NASCAR, working with IPTV stuff. I've done it. I've seen it. The one app that hopefully other people have, but may not, is called the Outbound Collective, which is a bunch of beautiful, amazing places to visit. And if I am feeling low and claustrophobic, I'll whip that out and I'll check out places that I should be when I'm vacationing. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny Chai. I'm Vice President of Engineering at LogDNA, which is a multi-cloud logging solution. I've been at various companies in the past, startups, large companies. I would say that when I think about growing and scaling, a lot of my experience is informed by my time at Facebook. I was there for 8 years, and I saw Facebook. There were 300 people at Facebook when I joined in 2007, and over 20,000 when I left, so I saw it through some crazy growth. So a lot of lessons, I'm sure, will be kind of informed by that time. In terms of an app on my phone, I'm pretty obsessed with efficiency, and that includes how I listen to podcasts. So I'm always thinking about how to listen to them more efficiently. So I have all these apps that let me listen at like 2x speed or even faster. Oh. And so that's kind of...
Does everything sound like Mickey Mouse?
It does, and I start to talk faster naturally because of it. It's a bad habit, but yeah.
Don't slow down during this session.
I'll try.
Hi everyone, I'm Cos. I lead engineering at Brex. Before that was at Stripe for about 4.5 years, and then Microsoft before that for about 5.5. Moved here from Romania when I went to college on the East Coast. In terms of apps, I was just going to do a shameless plug for the Brex app since we just launched it last week, but then I already met people who have it, so thank you for that. And then I'm going to back up to an app called Bear, which I use for all my note-taking, to-dos, interviews, and it's basically what I pull up every hour.
Cool. In case any were wondering, my app would be Superhuman. Any Superhuman people out there? No? One or two? Okay, a couple folks. Good stuff. So, you know, different companies, different sizes, different priorities. We'll start with you, Kathryn. How do you measure the success of your engineering / product organization?
It's tough at a philanthropy with an 81-year mission. So our group is trying to cure or manage all diseases by the end of the century. So what KPIs do you put in place that you can actualize in my lifetime? I've got another 80 years in me, I think, if we're successful. So for us, you know, it's really tricky. We also work very closely with scientists who have a much longer time frame in front of them, right? They'll set experiments that last years. And for us, we want to be bi-weekly, and we want to have quarterly, and then, you know, year half is really as far out as we can forecast. And so it's important for us to keep those crisp and clear and measurable and actionable. Otherwise, we could just go off the rails.
Yeah. Danny?
You know, my company is at an interesting stage, and we run into similar problems as maybe CZI, not so much in terms of the time scale, but because we're growing really fast, and so it's a great problem, but it means that the challenges we're facing are so dynamic, it's really hard to plan ahead in terms of what we want to achieve. So we found that like the best way to measure success has to be around other things such as culture. Like how aggressive are we about taking each engineer that is, about taking on new problems, or is a culture of code review healthy, or the culture of mentoring set up well. So it's these things that are kind of put in place to help you succeed, and less about the specific, say, product features that we want to launch just because we're dealing with such crazy growth and a dynamic environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to Danny, we have pretty high growth and aggressive timelines as we move forward. And so We chose to do quarterly planning and OKRs, and we measure things all the way from people and culture-related stuff to features, and especially SLOs, because as an infrastructure company, you end up having a lot of reliability as part of the things that you measure, and like efficiency for all the different teams. And I think the key for us is that we align it across the company so that every single team sort of does that and is able to align priorities across.
Yeah, so, different perspectives again, different strategies have to be employed to accurately measure success for organizations. I imagine in your careers you've seen, common mistakes that are made by maybe even yourselves or others that are under you, engineering managers, et cetera, product managers. What would you say are like the top two that folks in the crowd should watch out for when they're measuring the success of their organizations?
Yeah, really thinking that it's throughput. Right? What you get out the door is your measure of success, and that's just one piece of the picture. How is the culture? Is the team in a state of flow? Are they communicating with each other? Are people elevating issues as they come up? Those are the things that you should be looking at, not how much code is written. I had a guy who wanted to measure, seriously, lines of code, and this was a CTO at a former company, and I'm like, you are an idiot. You're an idiot. Like, we're going to gamify. We're going to cut and paste, right? Like, that's insane. So it's not throughput. It's myriad different things.
Looking Kathryn up on LinkedIn to see who this person was.
I'll tell you later.
I would echo that. I think a lot of it is just having the right metrics. Like sometimes things that seem obvious, like for a support person, how many tickets they handle, that seems like the right thing, but everything gets gamified. So they'll just close things with a kind of superficial response, and that's not really what you want. So really making sure you're measuring what you really want to measure. It's super easy to put in intermediate steps that are easier to measure, but aren't actually what you want to get to. So for example, in the past, we've had, even at Facebook, our goals were there was a long-time goal of making the page load really, really fast, which is a reasonable goal, but it's actually in service of a greater goal, which is to have people spend more time on the site. But we got so focused on that intermediate goal that it actually interfered with what we were trying to do. So new features were not going out. If it was deemed as being slow, it became like this barrier to what we really wanted. And I think that happens a lot. You have a good intermediate goal that makes sense over time, but you should really have the mindset of thinking about what you really want and make sure that they're aligned with that at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to anything is a tool and how you use it ends up being most important. If you choose the wrong things you're measuring, then the company will optimize for the wrong things. If you choose things that you can't influence until right at the end, then it's a Boolean, like you've made it or didn't make it, and you can't really adjust over time. I think the biggest failure mode that I've seen is when people get obsessed about the things that they're trying to measure in their OKRs and then give up on the bigger picture, even though they realize it's changed. I had a conversation at some point with one of the managers on my team, and he was trying to optimize for something around 5%. And I was like, does that matter? Is that the most important thing? And he was like, no, this other thing is actually much more important. And I was like, why aren't you doing that? I was like, well, that's not on my OKRs. This is on my OKRs. I need to hit that. Otherwise, I'm not going to hit that. I was just like, you're completely missing the point on that.
Yeah, when OKRs wag the dog, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Right? And one more point on that.
Yeah, go.
If you have enough KPIs in there, or OKRs, key results, whatever you want to call it, and they are different things, but if you have enough of them, some will move up and some will move down if you're doing things the right way. So say you're like, let's rein in our bug SLA, but at the same time, let's ship more features. Right? Those two things are not necessarily going to work the same way. So, being deliberate about how you're twisting the knob and what's changing is really important.
Yeah, having sober, informed OKRs, so maybe leveraging more your user researchers, your data scientists, et cetera, so you're bringing data to the conversation.
I didn't say sober.
I'm using that word. So when we think about, at your various levels of leadership, sometimes you have folks that report to you that, might push back. They might disagree. They might not want to get on board with your vision or your strategy around creating metrics of success to measure organization. How do you mitigate that? How do you engage that attention?
You just fire them.
That was my answer. No.
Well, I do think that this is why having cultural objectives as part of your metrics is really important, because it's really important that, especially your managers, kind of are steeped in the culture of what you want for the company. I think this frequently goes wrong when that doesn't happen. They've come in with their own set of cultural standards. A lot of time it's kind of be more individually oriented as opposed to team-centric. So yeah, just filtering for that at the hiring stage, but even making sure that as they're getting onboarded, that they really are steeped in the culture, I think helps a lot with this.
Yeah, and root cause what the pushback is, right? Some people are afraid of any change. Some people, inertia sucks. Some people don't want to be graded, and they think that these kind of KPIs are punitive, right? And so get to the root cause of what the issue is, explain why it's important. It's not just for them, it's for stakeholders. It's also to understand what areas need focus, right? If we're really lagging on certain things, maybe we need to pick them up. And as engineers, if you can't measure it, how do you know if you're improving it, right? So they usually don't have a comeback for that one.
Yeah, I'd echo that, listening to people and figuring out why they're pushing back. All of us hire really smart people, and we trust them. And then when they push back, there's some rational reason why they do that. And really understanding what that is and either adjusting it or giving them more context on why we're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have these metrics of success, everyone's on board, hooray, kumbaya. Do you find that there are times when sometimes a hyper-focus on your metrics of success can compete with sometimes the notion of product excellence, right? So we get more data, things happen dynamically. Let's say you create OKRs in a quarter. How do you deal with, again, more tension between getting green or a 1.0 on that OKR, that metric of success, as opposed to what is the right thing to be done for a product?
Yeah, if you get green and you hit your targets, but you still collectively feel like the team is not doing what they should be doing, then go back, iterate, retrospect on what you missed, and then try to capture that the next time around. And it's also really important to let people know it's not just the KPIs, it's not just the OKRs. There are a lot of intangibles that you just can't measure, and those should be constantly iterated on and improved upon and refined, right? It's not just a grade book, right?
I'm pretty aggressive about adjusting goals as we go when it's necessary. You don't want to do it too much because churn makes it really difficult to know what you're aiming for. But in a dynamic environment, it's frequently necessary. So for me, it's making sure the cultural objectives are very set in stone, but kind of being more flexible on specific objectives related to outcomes.
Yeah, and checking in often on them so you can make adjustments. Someone also gave me the advice of you can put all the measurements in place, you can put OKRs, KPIs, SLOs, etc. But at the end of the day, you also have a gut instinct. If you look at a team, as this many engineers, that's the mission, that's what they're supposed to do. You feel that that's actually happening. And if it's not, just have a conversation with the people on the team, the manager of the team, and try to troubleshoot why you have that feeling, because it's not everything will be end up measuring.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then how do you more specifically, what are your strategies for tracking actual OKRs and KPIs? In each of the unique organizations that you all are in, how do you set an OKR, you say you have a KPI, how do you actually track it?
At CZI, it's difficult because we have 11 different disparate engineering projects under management. So we're not all pulling together for the same, it's not like at Evernote where everybody's working on a productivity app. And so there it's really different because they're at different places in their product and software development lifecycle. So it's tricky. We do have a unified Google Sheet that holds all the things for each of the teams, different tabs, and they have periodic check-ins, and then they, how does it feel? At Evernote, I had a much more automated reporting. I have one of my former managers in the audience is probably rolling his eyes and gnashing his teeth at me right now. But we would pull this stuff out of Jira, and it was things like commit to close rates, bug SLAs, number of hot fixes between actual releases, things like that you could really suss how is the team performing. And that was, it was useful, I think, and he could come up and punch me later, just to really identify the hot spots and focus people on what needed changing. So it really depends. What is the project? What is the team's appetite for this kind of rigor? But it is important to do pretty periodic check-ins and make sure that you're trending the way you want to so you can adjust and not be super rigid.
Yeah. We're still relatively small, so a lot of ours happens on the individual level. Like we track weekly and one-on-ones, for example, and make sure that happens all across the stack. Yeah, it's a difficult problem, to be honest, and especially in, like I said, the dynamic environment that we have. It just changes a bit, so I would say actually it's a challenge for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we use spreadsheets. We have a spreadsheet that has every team in the company, so it's basically at the manager level. Every manager has a set of OKRs for their team. And then for engineering, we also use Jira, so each objective actually links to an epic in Jira, and from there we can actually track tasks. And then we write a report every month across the company, so each function writes a report of progress towards OKRs.
Cool. Awesome, thanks. I'll switch gears a little bit, so we have some extra time here. You all flew through those questions. So, thinking about the span of your career thus far, thinking about managers that you've had, or just like key influencers in general, and this is kind of like a question that we've all been thinking about as a theme at this conference. What's like the one bit of advice that someone has shared with you? And if you have a story, that'd be awesome to come with it as context, that you think has really influenced like your career, how maybe you evaluate your team, who you are as a person, professionally, et cetera.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer. I have a very firm grasp of what I think is right and what I think is wrong. And when I see things that I think are going wrong, I'll typically stick my head up and try to fix them. And so throughout my career, this has been a thing that has sometimes caused me to get my head cut off. Because I'll stick it up, I'll be like, this is a thing I'm going to champion, I'm all in, I'm going for it, who's with me? And I turn around and all my allies have sat down. I'm like, oh, shit. So the piece of advice that I got from my coach was, pick the hill that you are going to die on, right? Just pick the hill. Pick one or two. Don't pick all of them. You can't fix all of the things. You can't get so emotionally invested in fixing all of the things because people have different priorities. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe it's just not something that you have agency to fix. But pick the things that you really care about the most and go all in on them, right? And don't just boil the ocean with your emotions and your energy. And so I thought that was really powerful. And that has really helped with my sanity and my career longevity at places, because you can pretty much map, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you can map when I leave companies. That's when my head pops off and it gets nicked off. Not from a firing perspective, but just from a what can I tolerate perspective.
I think everyone is excited to check
oh my
on
God.
LinkedIn now.
I know. It's like Us Weekly. It's really important, pick your battles, find your allies, make sure the timing is right, and then that's what you go all in on. Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest lesson I learned was just to have the default attitude of thinking, how can I make something happen as an engineer, as an engineering team, or even as a company. So before I joined Facebook, I don't want to say where it was, but it was a very mature company. And I think one of the curses of experience is that you see what doesn't work. So when you think about a new project, automatically, okay, I'm going to have difficulty with this, or this, or these are why it's just not practical or feasible. And at this company, they even had a council, a review council, that would evaluate new projects. And I found that the culture that it encouraged is actually why stuff is hard or won't work. It just kind of happened. And I kind of learned that myself. And like I say, I think that's the curse of experience. You just learn that. When I went to Facebook, I was just shocked. There were all these 20-something engineers. I was over 30, so I was kind of stuck out a bit. And they just didn't know what couldn't be done. So they were trying all these things repeatedly. And my experience was just screaming out, this just won't work. You guys are crazy. But they just kept on doing that from the top all the way down. And actually, 95% of the time, I was right. It wasn't possible. It didn't work out. The thing is, 5% of the time I was wrong and they were right. And it's really that 5% of the crazy things that they tried, that they accomplished, that made the company successful, I think. I mean, people forget how much of an underdog the company was at the time. It was way smaller than MySpace. There was just a lot of challenges. But they attempted really great things, and it's because they just tried, and they didn't even know it was impossible. I learned a lot from that. Just make that your first instinct, try, because it's that you will fail a lot of the time, but it's that small fraction of the time that you succeed that really makes your company take off.
Yeah, so I started my career out of Microsoft when I first graduated, and I used to talk quite a lot. And it was this thing that at Microsoft actually helped me quite a lot because people heard my opinions. I would be able to get into good debates with people. And I kept doing that. And then when I switched to management years later, one of the best advices that ended up changing me as a person, I think, was that my manager at the time basically told me that I need to more or less shut up most of the time and like literally change how I interact with people. In that, like, my job is now listening and not being afraid of filling in the space and the awkward silence. In one-on-ones, I would, like, if I ask you a question and you don't have an answer, I'll immediately start trying to help you out. I'll immediately start trying to, like, come up with a solution because that's kind of how my brain is wired. And they're like, yep, sit there for 10 seconds, and it'll be really painful, but eventually it'll be much better. And now, contrary to like what you see here with us just talking, like I speak so much less in most meetings than almost anybody else, and it gives the opportunity for everybody else to chime in a lot more and come up with their own ideas.
Cool. So super bits of pro tips we've heard here, right? Important. So like pick your 1 or 2 hills you're going to die on, put your flag on, fight fiercely for it. Maybe having a default posture of saying yes, or maybe a hopeful posture, like maybe we can do this awesome, crazy thing. And then just really being a leader and listening, and I'd argue maybe throwing in empathy and being vulnerable and just like showing best practices around communication in general, which listening is a big part of, as we all know. You know, I will throw in an answer for this one. I think the biggest bit of advice, or most influential so far for me, is a manager at Google told me that, you know, Howard, the person that you've been thus far, that it's gotten you to where you are today, you know, the role level and the responsibilities, the impact, et cetera, is not necessarily the person you need to be for the next, who you envision to grow into. And I know that that might be maybe common sense to many of us in the crowd, but I think for those who are new managers, for example, maybe you were an IC or a TL and now you're an engineering manager, or maybe you were an engineering manager and now you're more of like a director VP, having like that expectation of a growth mindset and like knowing that's going to be a consistent thing throughout your career, not just necessarily from IC to manager, but also like the degree to which you are a manager, for me is proven to be like really helpful. Awesome. Well, I think Mustafa and Co is going to be really happy with me because I got us some time back, put us back on schedule. Thanks so much for being on the panel, and thank you all for listening.